Hey everybody, this is Mike Young from the Tesla High Mileage Club, and you can find us at teslahighmileageclub.com. And I am so excited here with Paul Curzon. I think I'm pronouncing it right there, right?
That's the one.
Very good. All right. Well, he is very close to Sheffield, England, which I know Sheffield because my wife grew up in Sheffield in Pennsylvania, but I have not been across the pond to see that part in England. But he's here because, as far as I know, as far as we know in the group, Paul has the highest mileage Tesla that's on the original battery pack and the original motors. You know, for me, I've got a high one, but not as high as Paul. So, Paul, why don't you start off right away? Tell us what the current mileage is, and then we'll kind of get into your story.
Hello from over the pond. So I've just gone over 440,000 miles, 150 I think it is today. So just done a couple of airport runs today. Yeah, just past the 440,000 mile mark.
That is amazing, amazing. Just to put that in perspective, I thought mine was high, and I'm a little over 280,000. So I've got a long way to go.
I think I'm on the equivalent of my 18th time around the world at the equator.
Wow! And how many oil changes so far?
0.
Okay, that's the important part. It's like you're free to live your life for the most part because the car has had almost no problems. It's not perfect, but it's way better than the average internal combustion engine vehicle. So
100%, yeah, 100%.
All right, now so you're the original owner, and I'm the original owner of my car too. Mine was a 2017 February build. When was yours built?
So it's on a 66 plate over here. So it was registered in September 2016. So shortly before that.
Okay, very good. So yours is a 90D Model S. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's for folks who don't know. Model S is the original larger four-door sedan. Is still being produced today. Although they've refined and made some changes. I think right now, 90 is not even available anymore. 100 is the pack that's available on the current model. Mine is a Model X, which is built on the same chassis. It's a little bit larger, and I also have the 90 pack. So we both have probably this very similar versions of the cells and the architecture in our cars, which is great that they seem to be very reliable. I mean, it surprises me because that was one of the biggest things when I got my Tesla was, my car right before this was a Lexus, and Lexus is the high end of Toyota. I don't know if they're sold. I think they're sold there in England. And, they are, my car, like most Lexuses are built in Japan. And I had that car for, let's see, it was a 2012. Yeah. I had that car for 5 years, and I didn't have a single problem. It never went back to the dealer. So that was my expectation. And I had a feeling I was going to be disappointed, but I've had a few service calls, but no breakdowns of the powertrain, which is amazing. So let's get into your story. How did you get into the business that you're in? Because I know you're in a taxi service, you're in a limousine service. How did you get into that, and how was this?
The big thing is it was the unknown, wasn't it?
Yeah, Paul's internet's a little bit choppy here, unfortunately, from across the
pond. Sorry, am I still here?
Yeah. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and start from the beginning? How did you get into the business that you're in, and how was your Tesla Model S instrumental in you starting that business?
So backtracking a little bit, at the age of 17, I joined the British Army, and I served 12 years in the Army, and I was either fortunate or unfortunate at the time, depending which way you looked at it. But I got out in 2005, just as the Second Gulf War just finished. So I became a private military contractor. So I was actually working for you guys, for the DoD, and the Corps of Engineers. And amazing money, amazing lifestyle. And it was always supposed to be sort of a year. Earn some good money, pay the bills off, come back and become a civilian proper. And 11 years later, I was still there after serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I even went shooting pirates for a little bit for a career. So I was looking for an exit strategy, as you might say, and I always wanted to drive, but I was actually looking at using a Mercedes S-Class 3-litre V6 diesel, and it just wasn't coming together. Everybody does it. It's a very expensive car. It's very high maintenance. It's very high on fuel, and it meant that I had to charge a premium for my services. And it makes you a very similar looking fish in a very small pond, basically. So you'd struggle to find work. So I was looking. I walked into my son's room. He was 7 or 8 years old at the time, and he was watching YouTube, and he was watching a Model S pre-facelift 90D P90D on the quarter mile, racing Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and he said, "Dad, have you seen this car?" And I said, "No. Is it a Maserati? Is it a Jaguar? Very similar looks." And he said, "No, it's called Tesla." And hands up, I'd never heard of Elon Musk. I'd never heard of Tesla. I knew who Nikolai Tesla was from history, but never heard of them. And he said, "It's all electric and it's really fast." And then I thought straight away, electric, eco-friendly. There's my USP, my unique selling point. So I went downstairs onto the computer and I researched Tesla, and I found YouTube videos, the website, and my nearest Tesla. Well, at that point in the UK, there wasn't even showrooms. It was a very small shop in a little arcade in Leeds, in North Yorkshire.
Hey, Paul.
And they had literally one Model S in the walkway where pedestrians walked.
Paul, can you just turn off your video so that we can hear you more clearly? Just turn off your video.
Yeah. Is that better?
Yes, go ahead.
How's that?
Very good.
Believe it or not, actually, we are on Starlink as well, so that's not a good advertisement. So yeah, sorry. So I don't know what you heard up to. So I discovered the car on YouTube through my son. Went to Leeds the next day, and like I say, it was a shopping arcade with a little shop with a car in the thoroughfare, the walkway, and that was the only car that was available, the Model S. And I basically went in and I said, "I'm looking." So very confidently passed me a set of keys, and he said, "Take it for a week." And they gave me a test drive model.
An entire week. An entire week.
Yeah, extended test drive, which meant they were very confident in the product. And I took it away, and I drove for a week, and I went to every major airport. I went to every charger. There was only 6 chargers in my area of the UK, which was pairs on the old version 2 charger.
Right.
And it worked. And like we said before off camera, the idea came together with the free supercharging, which was before any terms of use or anything like that. It was all new.
Right.
So I was totally transparent about my use, and I sold me the car.
Paul, I have a question. When you test drove at that time, did you notice that you had any range anxiety in between superchargers? Because there weren't that many at the time, right?
Motion detected.
Correct. There was only 6. No, and I'll be honest with you. So being ex-military, you're always told to have a plan B for everything.
Right.
So
right.
I love planning, and I love range, speed, distance, time. I can do my planning till the cows come home. So no, and my thought process was, if I can make it work now, in the future there'll be more chargers.
Yes.
So it'll just get easier. That was my thought process behind it, and it all came together. But like I say, I did have that moment of doubt where, like I say, we're not known for being the most intelligent people in the British military. There's a lot of smarter people out there. And I had that moment of self-doubt thinking, why is nobody else doing it? Why has nobody else thought about this?
Right. Well, what did you think about the self-doubt, your analysis of this whole thing? What did you think about the potential reliability of the car? What were you thinking at that time in 2016?
I'll be totally honest with you, it was totally unknown. Nobody had any real experience with them. It was all new. Right. I mean, I think there was about 300 Teslas in the UK when I bought mine. And again, to be honest, they were very expensive cars, and generally
Yes.
they were bought by very rich people, which was their car for a Sunday afternoon drive. They weren't used as daily drivers back in the day.
So,
Um,
all right, well, Paul, so if that was the case, were you getting a lot of looks wherever you went, kind of like driving a
oh,
Cybertruck today?
yeah, yeah. I honestly became really quite skeptical. But I honestly got out of the car and kicked the tires sometimes, thinking I was driving around with four flat tires because people would be looking at you with their mouths open. It became quite disturbing at some
Right.
points. Yeah, it was all new. An example now, I drive Manchester. Uh, it's an hour and 15 drive. You would not see another Tesla all the way there, all the way back. I
Right.
drive there now. You probably see six or seven in each direction. They're everywhere now. So yeah, it was totally new. Nobody,
Okay. All right.
it
Well,
was, but it's great.
Paul, as you said, that one of the perks at the time that you were looking to buy there in late 2016 was that you were told that you would have free supercharging for the life of the vehicle, right?
That's correct. Yeah, to the chassis number.
Okay.
So I don't know what it was like in the US, but so up to February 2017, the free supercharger was given to the vehicle to the chassis number. And then in 2017, they changed things slightly and they gave us a referral code. So then my passengers, if they liked the car,
Right.
I could give them my referral code. I would get a nice gift off of Tesla,
Yeah.
and then they got free supercharging for their ownership of the car. Once you change the VI, which is your registration document, your ticket in this country, the supercharging fell away from the car.
Yes.
But
Yes.
not the original. The
That
original.
that was the same. That I remember that time because I was looking at buying mine in late 2016 as well, and that was the same deal they offered in the U.S. And they told me this is kind of what motivated me at the time. Let me know if this was a factor with you. But they told me that if I didn't order my car by the because I couldn't take delivery, I got a Model X. They didn't have any inventory at that time, but
Yeah.
I could order one before the end of December 2016. As long as I did that, then I would have that deal where I went with the car. So that kind of sped me along to it helped me, it helped my decision. Did you know that it was
Yes.
going to end like that as well? Did you know that?
No, I'll be honest. I was too busy to be honest. I was
Okay.
I was out of the loop, and what's really quite disturbing is I suppose I was fairly naive, and so naivety sometimes dispels some of the worry. But
Yes.
I've since listened to Elon's autobiography, and when you realise how close to going bust it all was, very much the same guys as the fish at ocean at the moment.
Yeah.
Everything falls away. The updates, the free supercharging could have all gone. But I was so naive to it. It wasn't really a worry because I didn't really pay any attention really.
Okay, so that was another factor because it was for me too. Like, is this company going to survive? Because as far as I know, Tesla started up, I believe, as a brand new company in 2008, something like that. They didn't release Model
Yeah,
S till 2011 or 12. That was their first
yeah,
mass-produced vehicle for the general public. And from what I understood at the time, I knew this. I wasn't quite as naive, unfortunately. Well, it was probably better to be naive at the time because otherwise I was risking the most expensive purchase I'd ever made on four wheels in my life, you know,
yeah.
and there had been I think no company that had started in the last 100 years in the U.S. that was an automobile company that didn't go bankrupt. So
Yeah, yeah.
everything was against the company succeeding.
I mean, hindsight's a great thing, but I'll give you a quick tip. I think if I'd have put the £105,000 that I spent on the car into Tesla shares, I think I'd have about 2.5 million in the bank right now.
Yes,
So,
that's
so
true.
if we
You're
have the
right about
hindsight
that.
we have,
But you wouldn't have an income
yeah,
source. You wouldn't have an income source though, right? So it's not like you lost out completely. I mean, you get one or the other. And what are the chances of a stock going up that high? It's very, very low. But if
it
you put
is.
in the hours and you pick up passengers, you're gonna make money.
That's correct. Yeah, it's a good reliable income, and and actually the business has flourished since COVID purely because a lot of companies went bust, so there's not that many taxis out there. And
Right.
if you've got the choice of jumping in a Ford or jumping in a Tesla, you're always going to jump in a Tesla. See, so it's
Okay.
the way ahead.
That's right. You're absolutely right. So what about, I'm curious, over there in the UK, Are there any special privileges on the roads if you're driving an electric vehicle? Because I know in some areas of the United States there are.
Yeah, so basically they've all fallen away now. They've gone. Back in the day, so I get free road tax,
Uh-huh.
so I don't have to pay for road tax, which
Nice.
was based on emissions. So if you had a big gas gun 3 litre diesel, you pay a lot. Whereas if you had a
Right.
1 litre little turbo sort of thing, you pay less. But I mean, I get that totally free. Um, but they changed that this year. But I think I just get away with it because I'm a very early adopter. If you
Yeah,
was
that's right.
2018 sort of thing, you've got to pay it this year. Also, we have London has a congestion charge, which I think is about 15 quid a day. If I go into the centre of London, uh, I get that free. And then also now in most major UK cities, we're having these things called ULEZ, low emission zone, which again can be £7 or £8 a day every time you enter into a city.
Oh, wow.
You get that free as well. So yeah, so there are perks out there, and also as well actually for the British government, I got a £6,500 grant towards the cost of the car as well back in the day as well,
Nice. Okay,
which
that's
was
right. Okay, so in the United
free
States,
money.
I can tell you, like in the United States, in the same time period, there were certain incentives where you could drive in the high occupancy lanes if you only had one passenger, if you have an electric vehicle. Most of those have gone away, like you said. There's been EV credits when you purchase the car and on your taxes. They're still here in the United States, those are still going. But you calculated all this. You figured, okay, it's late 2016. This is a business idea, right? I'm going to have a taxi service. I'm basically going to get a car that is going to, let's say it's like an internal combustion engine with where I can fill it for free at the gas pump. So I'm not going to have to have any ongoing fuel costs at all or electric costs. And then you're going to get discounts and incentives on different areas that you might travel into from a tax basis. So it seemed like it took something that was a very narrow profit business that you described earlier and it made it into a higher profit business, right?
Correct, yeah. And plus the maintenance. I mean, like I said in the video on Auto Trader, I
Mm,
mean, the average service intervals for a diesel is what 15,000 miles.
right.
I generally do 10,000 miles a month. So
A month.
every other month, I'm going in for a service. And a basic service on a Mercedes, you're talking 500 quid for filter changes and oil change, and
Right.
wiper and all that kind of stuff. So just the savings alone on maintenance and fuel is more than pay for the car. So yeah, it was just a very smart buy.
Okay, so
Really.
yeah, so let me kind of go over that then again because I felt similar. Obviously, I did not start a taxi service, but I started going on the road, living off the road as like a digital nomad lifestyle. And it made sense too because of a lot of the factors that you're talking about. The severely reduced maintenance costs, no fuel or electric costs, and other incentives provided by the government. And the thing is, you had to pay a lot for that vehicle, like you said. From my perspective, my Tesla when I ordered it in late 2016 was 3 times the cost of the most expensive car I'd ever bought. And I'm 54 right now, so when I bought that, I was 47 when I actually purchased the car, and so I lived as a lot as an adult. And 3 times the price of the car is pretty significant, right? When you're talking about a monthly payment, but the monthly payment covers almost everything. That's what I noticed as well, probably like you noticed. So all you got to do is get in that vehicle, drive it carefully, drive it as much as you can, and try to, for in your case, pick up as much passengers as you can, and then it's a no-brainer almost, as long as you can do that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct. Yeah, it's a very lucrative business, and it's all about planning and timing. The key in my business is not to travel empty. So if you can go to an airport and take somebody drop off, and then pick somebody up and come back, you're basically double bubbling, as we say. You're making twice as much money. So
right.
it's all about it's a great tool, and it's a very attractive car as well for people to get in and out of. So,
All right, now what do you think, just focusing on this financial aspect before we move on to the maintenance and repairs, uh, for this, okay, we know that the deal that you got with the free electricity for life at the Tesla superchargers that's no longer available for the car. Then they brought in later, like you said, they brought in a thing where they said, okay, now it'll stay with the original owner, but only the original owner. The minute you transfer that, then it'll be gone. So
Yeah,
but that's also in the past. Now also, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure how things are in England. I'll comment on the United States. I know that in 2018, I believe they introduced the fair use supercharger policy for superchargers, and what it says is that any vehicle that you get after, I think it was December 2018, they claimed, from what I've seen anyway, that you couldn't use it for commercial use at the superchargers because they didn't want to clog it up. But if you had a car before that, doesn't matter, right? So,
yeah,
um,
that's correct. Yeah.
what do you think about somebody new who might get into this business with a brand new Tesla that doesn't have any of the benefits that yours has, or some other company? Is it as lucrative now as it was when you got in with your existing cars, or what do you think?
Well, first of all, I will say that you see a lot of Model Ys and Model 3s that have logos down the side for different, maybe not taxi companies, but certainly company cars and that kind of thing. And
Right,
they're all usually they don't really police the fair use very heavily
right. Oh
towards the
yeah,
go.
they don't. Yeah, I
Uh,
agree. It's only used
yeah,
if they have a problem with somebody. It's kind of, and then they'll get them if they have a problem with a particular
yeah.
one.
But I mean, so the trouble we have now is you can't buy the Model S or the Model X in right-hand drive for us over the pond driving on the wrong side, as you guys say.
Oh
So we
really?
can only drive left-hand drive.
Oh
So unfortunately, and it's a bit of a bugbear because the British market really supported Tesla in the early
yes,
days.
yeah,
They were very expensive cars. I mean, they literally we pay for the car in pounds what you guys were paying in dollars when
yes,
the
correct.
exchange rate was $1.6 to a pound. So they were sort of a third more expensive for us. So
Right,
we really supported Tesla in the early days. So to now find out that you can't buy one in right-hand drive is slightly annoying, and unfortunately, you cannot license a left-hand drive vehicle
oh,
as a taxi. So
oh,
anybody going into it today is now limited to the Model 3 or the Model Y.
I see.
And unfortunately, the Model 3, although a great car, particularly the new Highlander, the new version,
Yes,
the boot capacity, because it's effectively a saloon, as we would say,
yes, a trunk
uh,
saloon. Yes,
a
yes.
trunk, yeah. So unfortunately, the boot capacity is terrible. You can only get two suitcases in. So for the role that I do, it's not really feasible. Which then leaves you with the Model Y,
Yes.
which again is a fantastic car. The efficiency's changed. So I average normally driving, I probably average about 3 miles to a kilowatt in the
All right.
Model S, whereas I believe the Model Y is because it's lighter. Things have moved on. A lot of technology's moved on in the 8 years.
Yes.
They're averaging now 4 to 4.5, depending on how you drive.
All right.
So economically, it's better in that sense. But you're now paying for your electric, and again, it's all an exchange. But I think Tesla is one of the cheaper places to buy your electrics. It's about 46 pence a kilowatt, um, which is equivalent to 4 miles, which is about 10 pence a mile. So that's not too bad. But if you ever did have to use a third party network, so an independent charging system,
Right.
the rates that they charge, they're charging 78 pence, so nearly double what Tesla charge
Yeah.
per
Yeah.
kilowatt.
Okay.
So
Well, I don't know
so
how
it's
much
it's getting
experience.
less than that.
Yeah, I don't know how much experience you have with these other networks, but I have experience because my car got in an accident, actually two of them, and I want to talk to you about that, about yours if it did. But when I did, I had a rental car and it was electric. I used the other networks and they were horrible. I mean, it was
Yeah,
this was about 2.5 years ago, and of course, as we know, in the last year, almost all the manufacturers have gone over to the North American Charging Standard, aka Tesla plug, because they
yeah.
realize too that it doesn't matter how good your car is, if you have to go somewhere and charge, and it's a horrific experience, as it was for me, ongoing when I had that rental car, that nobody wants to deal with that.
I've always said the best thing about a Tesla. I mean, you can talk about speed, you can talk about refinement, you can talk about the car. The best thing in a Tesla is that map in the center of the car. That when you tap on the charging logo, it brings up all the available chargers within your range, and it
Yes.
has that figure of how many stalls are actually available
Yes.
real time. So then you head to the place with the most chargers, and then you're guaranteed. And I've never had a problem with all this waiting and
Yep.
standing around. I just plan better and head towards the available chargers.
That's right.
The only
It's
problem that
same
we've
with
got in the
me.
UK at the moment,
Yeah, it's same with
yeah,
me. I mean,
the only trouble in the UK,
uh-huh.
and I'm not sure what it's like in America, but
Hmm.
the UK, we've just opened up certain locations to other manufacturers.
Same here.
And so in this world, there's very little common sense these days, but the common sense thing would have been at the very start of the electrical revolution, as it were, again. Uh, Tesla and Nissan were the two leading factors at the time.
Yes.
And there should have been a meeting between all motor manufacturers. And the first order of business on that meeting should have been, let's discuss what plug we're going to use. So obviously originally it was the Type 2, then it became the CCS or CSS,
Yes.
whichever it's called.
Yes.
But you have the Canamo, the Nissan, there's so many different plugs out there, it's unbelievable. And then the second order on the meeting should have really been, let's discuss where we're going to put the charge port. So Tesla's rear left, Peugeot, Mercedes is rear right, Jaguar, Audi, Porsche on the A pillar. Nissan and some of the Hyundai models is on the front. So the only downside at the moment is you head to a charger that says it's got available places, and then you get there to find there's actually a Mercedes part there, which is actually in the opposite bay because the charging port's on the wrong side.
That's right.
Split up two bays. So
and that's a
minor problem.
Yeah, that's a new phenomenon, right? I never noticed that until very, very recently that Tesla has opened up, and that's that's definitely an issue. I would agree. And from my understanding of history, the way you described it was very accurate as far as I'm concerned. One thing I want to add is that it sounded like when the companies developed the CCS standard, that I think that was around the time that Tesla was developing their plug. And apparently, I think that Tesla may have somewhat been involved, but they didn't like the direction that the design was going in, from what I remember hearing. And because of that, they decided to engineer their own system because they felt it was more reliable, more lightweight, more easy to handle. And that's why they went with what they have. And sure enough, as I've experienced with the CCS system, it is cumbersome. It breaks down a lot. It's not intuitive, and I'm glad that they did what they did, but I think that they tried to say something, but no, but the industry didn't want to listen. The industry, as you probably know, the automotive industry is big into a lot of things that Tesla's not into, such as oil, such as unions, such as dealership networks, right? So they didn't really want to have anything to do with Tesla, I think, in the early days.
Yeah, I mean, it was slightly annoying as well when you spend so much on a car that then you had to spend more money to future-proof your car for the new charging network. That was quite annoying at this time. But
that's right.
I mean, I've got the adapter; it works perfectly well. It is what it is, isn't it?
Do you use from time to time you will go to places that are non-Tesla chargers? What's your experience?
I try to avoid it as much as possible, but again, certain areas of the UK, so the East Coast is not very well developed for Tesla at all. We've got the central corridor down the M1 motorway, which is brilliant, but you do go to certain areas where it's just not quite good enough. So you do sometimes have to rely on a third party. The only thing that I don't like about it is you kind of put all your eggs in one basket and you head towards a charger, not knowing whether it's functioning, not knowing whether there's a queue. So that it's not anxiety; it's just annoying more than anything, to be quite honest.
So it's like gambling, right? Gambling.
It is, yeah. It's rolling the dice. You get there, and because I mean, we've still got 50 kilowatt chargers. So if there's a guy charging on that charger, you're looking at 45 minutes for him to finish.
Yeah.
And then if you've got a couple of cars in front of you, you can be there 3, 4, 5 hours if you're not careful. So yeah, it is. So I purely for the availability, the little number, knowing what's there before you get there. I just generally use Tesla. rely on it. I think it's the best thing about the company, the actual network as well. You know,
That's right.
it's a
Yeah,
major selling point.
I would agree. And I, just so you know, I really, not only did I risk just what you did, I risked, will the company stay alive financially? Are these products reliable? You know, a number of other things. One of the other things I risked was that I didn't have a home charger. Do you have a home charger? Have you always had one? Because I have never
Yeah,
had a home charger, so I've always been fully dependent on the supercharger network.
yeah. I mean, I have. Luckily, I've actually got. So I've actually got two Teslas, two Model S's. So the other one has got 375,000 miles on it. So
300,000.
yeah, we're slightly behind,
Yeah,
but pretty good for a second car. So I've got two 7 kilowatt chargers on the house, and actually last year I invested in a 12.5 kilowatt solar system. Um, so I basically make 7 kilowatts, so I can charge a car for free in the daytime at
nice.
home. And I've also got, as part of the referral code system, I got a very nice red Powerwall as a gift from Tesla. So
Yes.
that's 13.5 kilowatt capacity, and I've got another 17 kilowatt battery. So I've actually got 30 kilowatts of storage as well.
Very
Um,
nice.
so between that and the Starlink, my house is pretty much you know self reliant.
Very nice. That's excellent. I'm glad to hear that. And of course, you need to, because every moment that your car is stopped and charging, you're not making money, or you're missing out on potential work, right?
Correct, yeah. But I generally throughout the day I generally use. Oh, sorry, my daughter's just coming.
It's all right. Yeah, I hear it.
Come here, dog. Come here. Come here. Oh. You hit your toes. Okay, sorry. Just gotta give her a quick. Is that
Yep.
better? Yeah.
Bedtime over there in the UK.
Bedside. Oh yeah, yeah. She's
But
right. You go back in bed.
this is not the son that told you about Tesla originally. It sounds younger.
No, so this is my daughter. We
Yeah,
had a lockdown surprise, as they call
right.
it.
Yeah,
we
there were many of
we
those.
yeah, we completed Netflix. Had to find something else to do, and a baby was born. So I'm 48 years old, and I've now got a 3-year-old daughter. So
Yeah.
I've kind of started again.
That's all right. Yeah, I mean, my experience, generally, the parents that are older, the kids do even better than average in my experience.
Yeah, yeah. To be honest with you, it's much more pleasurable the second time round.
Uh-huh.
It's a joy, it really is. So yeah, it's
Excellent.
good.
Excellent.
And my girlfriend actually works for me. She's the office manager, so we are a
Yeah.
family business as well. You see, so yeah,
Oh,
it's good.
nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask you a question, while we're still on the supercharging or the charging of the cars. Um, have you kept track, let's say on your 450,000 mile Model S, have you kept track of the number of supercharging sessions you've completed by any chance?
Oh no, unfortunately not. But I mean, I'm doing 3, 4 a day.
Okay.
So yeah. So I mean, the way I work it is I generally leave the house whatever time in the morning. I'll always try and charge before I get back home, and then put the car on charge, usually the solar or the storage. And actually, economy 7 we call it in the UK. So in the UK, you get cheap rate electric
Right.
between certain hours in the middle of the night. So I generally set my car to try and charge on that as well, which
Okay.
is kind of my AC charger to balance the DC elements of it, which prolongs the life of the batteries.
Yeah.
But for an example, I've just put up the charge stats. So this year alone, the 440,000 car has charged 26,274 kilowatts,
26.
and it's saying that 56% of that is supercharging. So
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, massive savings.
All right. Well, I can tell you, just so you know, because we're kind of in a similar, I don't know, just a similar high usage and long term usage of our Teslas. I've been keeping track of mine. I've been using the Plug Share app, so it keeps every time I go to a different supercharger, I check in. Just takes a second
Yeah,
or two, and it keeps track of the number of charges. And I'm almost exclusively supercharged. I've rarely slow charged. It's very rare, because I don't even have a home charger, so I don't even have the option of doing that. Uh,
yeah,
I have approximately 3,300 supercharged sessions on the battery pack of my car right now.
Wow. So, and have you experienced much degradation from your original range?
Initially, in the first year or so, I
Yeah,
did. And actually, I want to ask you about this because back in the day, right, in the first year or so in 2017, at least in the United States, Tesla had a different policy on their maximum charge rate. They said that they wouldn't tell you how many supercharge sessions you needed, but they said that once you got to a certain number of supercharge sessions, that they would throttle you back to a maximum of 90 kilowatts for the
yeah,
life of the
yeah,
pack, right?
yeah, yeah. So it
You
was
had that
called
too?
the yeah, we called it the 90 kilowatt club.
Okay.
And I got into that quite early on.
So did
Uh,
I. Yeah.
but then ironically, it went in to have, I can't remember what something broke on the car and it went in for a repair.
Right.
And when it came out, that had been removed. And
Ah,
so I mean, even now, 8 years old, it'll go up to sort of 135 kilowatts.
right.
Um, but it's only there for a matter of seconds, and it
Yeah.
starts raining back quite quick.
Yes.
And it now generally sits around about 75, 80 kilowatts until about halfway. And then by the time you get to halfway, we're down to about 60 kilowatts. Yeah, and then the last bit. If you ever sit there and you're wasting time and you basically leave it on charge because you've got an hour to kill at an airport, you can get down as low as 4 kilowatts
Yeah.
towards the end of the battery. And then I just sit there, and if anybody else comes, then I just get off the charger out of the way. Sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
yeah.
and also for people that are new to electric cars, when Paul says kilowatts, that's the rate of electricity that's pumping into the battery pack. So the higher that number, the faster your pack is filling up. And it's always a bell curve, right? You start off, if you're at zero, it'll start off very slow, but then it'll quickly ramp up that bell curve, get to the peak, like he said, just for a short time, then it'll start to fall down, but slowly until you get to about 80%, then it'll start to get super slow. It's just like your battery on your mobile phone. It's the same type of a
Yeah.
curve, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah, I did have a go with the Model 3. That was a dual motor, and
Right.
the architecture is obviously the newer architecture, and it just accepts, and that was phenomenal. That
It
charged
was.
so quick. It was like it was like we was in the Stone Age. So
Okay, so let me ask you a question about that. Let's take into consideration the fact that if you buy a brand new Model 3 or Model Y, you cannot get the free electricity at the superchargers. That's not available anymore. But as you pointed out, the rate of charge, the maximum rate, and probably the average rate of charge of the battery pack at a supercharger is significantly faster. Do you think that that makes up for the difference? Or are you still kind of coming out a little behind with a brand new Tesla? What do you think?
yeah, I just love I'll be honest. So it was, I think it was December last year. I actually got an email from Tesla where they offered me, if I bought a new Model Y,
Yep.
they would let me transfer my free supercharger.
Yep.
Which was quite interesting, and it was very tempting. But I'm kind of I'm quite stubborn, and
Yeah.
I just want to see where I can go with this car. I want to see how far
Yes.
I can push it before it goes kaput, battery wise and motors
Yeah, I
wise.
want to see too.
So
I definitely
yeah,
want to see.
I'm kind of in for the long haul. I'm kind of hooked on the whole concept, and I
All right.
just want
Well, let me ask
to
you a
set
question,
off.
Paul. Without that special offer, because that's gone now,
Yeah.
from your perspective as a taxi driver, would that extra time that you gain by not having to spend it at a supercharger, would that be made up for in passenger revenue or not? What do you think?
I don't think so. But the only other concept that I've been working on, and I've been doing the maths on it, is so we could charge at night time on Economy 7 for 4.5 pence a kilowatt. So I could effectively charge the car now on a night time, and when I woke up in the morning, I could have a full battery. Well, I could do sort of Manchester and back 2.5, maybe 3 times if I drove nice and gently, which is over £600 revenue for those jobs if they fell right.
Right.
And then because I've got the free supercharging in the summertime from the 7 kilowatts worth of solar, or 12 kilowatts of solar, which equates to 7 watts by the time you've taken the realism into it.
Yeah.
I could still make a profit on that car just by charging at night and not using the supercharge network at all.
I see.
So, but
So
it
it's
would.
timing.
It's all about time. It's all about planning. It's yeah, trying to travel the least amount of time with nobody in the car. So, but the busier you get and the bigger your business gets, the more bookings you take, and the better the
Right.
chance of that happening. So in the future, I'm just in the stages now of planning a potential expansion. But at the moment, I'm looking for a Model X
Yes.
seven-seater, 90D with the free supercharging.
Yep.
Um,
That's what I
so
have. You want to
yeah,
buy my car?
yeah. Just stick it on a boat. You know, you can come over. Yeah, it's just that. I mean, for example, last week I said no to probably 5 bookings because, particularly after COVID, as we've discussed previously,
Yeah.
I think we're back up to about 2.3 children per family now. The birth rate went up during the lockdown.
Did. Yeah.
So we get a lot of bookings now that are mum, dad, and 3 kids. Well, I can't do that in a Model S. Whereas if I had a Model X seven-seater or a six-seater, I could go for slightly larger groups. So it's something
Right.
that I'm looking at the moment, trying to apply the original business plan.
Okay. Well, let me before we skip off of the supercharging because I have other questions about the car. Let me ask you this. I know I was told this when I bought my car, and right before, right after, I was told, look, the supercharging network is for long distance, occasional long distance travel. You don't ever want to use it all the time. Were you told that?
Yeah, to a certain degree. It wasn't when I bought the car, and it was more of a. It was more said in the guise of as the cars got more popular,
Uh-huh.
the supercharger network didn't keep up with the selling of the cars, so they did get a lot busier rather quickly.
They
So it
did.
was more said in a guise to stop actually people with no home charging. They were trying to
Like
stop
me.
that. So
Like me.
like yourself, yeah. So they were trying to stop people just solely charging the superchargers because it is quite annoying when you see somebody park a Tesla up and then another car's with them. They park the Tesla up and then they go and jump in another car and they go and leave the car there unattended, sort of thing,
That's right.
So it was said in that, but also as well, we're a very small country in comparison to you guys.
Yep.
We're only. I mean, it takes
Surrounded by
me.
water too. Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, you guys can drive for 2 or 3 hours without going around a corner. Never mind without going through a city or a town or past the supercharger. So we
mhm.
are a lot smaller, and actually the supercharger network is catching up now. There's been quite a large development in the last 6 months, actually.
Okay. So, well, anyway, I that's good that you heard that. My own feeling and my own things that I was told by people were that the battery pack was going to be damaged. There'll be additional degradation. The lifespan will be severely reduced. That's what I was told,
Yeah,
like over and
yeah,
over again, right? So that kind of, I was like, oh well, I guess I'm going to see because I got, that's another thing I want to kind of get out to people is that when I bought the car, Paul, I don't know about you, but I received an 8-year unlimited mileage warranty on the motors and battery pack. Is that what you have?
I do indeed. But I've actually recently found out that it's pretty much worthless, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
so I'm down to. So when my car was brand new, it did 282 miles on the dashboard.
Right.
They quoted you could do 300 miles, but you had to drive like Morgan Freeman in Driving Miss Daisy to get it. With no aircon on a flat road, sort of thing.
And lower the
Um,
suspension down all the way. Put it on range mode. Right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly that. All the little tricks in the box.
Yeah.
So I'm down on a full charge now. I'm looking at 217 miles. So I've lost about 65 miles range, but
Hmm.
it has plateaued now. It really has plateaued. I don't seem to lose any more range.
Same with
But
me. Same with me.
I was always gonna wait till the end of the warranty. So my warranty runs out in January next year.
Yes.
So um, and I'll be honest with you, I've always been promised things by the Tesla staff, which, to be honest, they were downright lies.
Okay.
Because
Ooh.
I've recently been sort of saying, I've been driving the car for all this time, and every time I walk in the showroom when I go to get a coffee when I'm charging, they'll stop me and say, "Hi, Paul, how's your Tesla going?" And I'm like, "Great, yeah. How many miles have you got?" So they're trying to sell cars, and they use me as
Yeah.
a sales coach as well.
Yeah.
When did you change your brakes? I got 230,000 miles out of first set brake pads. And so they use me as a sales pitch. So they always say they're going to look after me. So the other day I said, my degradation's at this level. I said, how do I go about claiming my new battery under my 8-year unlimited warranty? Because there was always talk of a 20% degradation rate, and then it was
Okay.
30%.
Well, that,
But
Paul, there was no, the warranty that I got did not have degradation. Only the new ones do in the United States. The only one I got was for complete battery failure. That's all. That's the only thing that's covered on mine.
yeah, so in conversations with members of staff, they always talked about a degradation rate. But like I say, actually in the paperwork, it didn't exist, and it only depends. It exists on Model Ys, Model 3s at 30%. But
Exactly.
you've got to, I think you've only got 125,000 mile or 70-year warranty, or whichever comes first.
Right.
So to get that degradation rate in that short period of time, it's nearly impossible unless you've got a faulty car. So,
That's
so
right.
the actual warranty, although it sounds very nice, I've never actually claimed on it, and then when I tried to claim on it, it didn't really cover what I wanted anyway. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
as
let me
much as
ask
I
you
look,
about a few more things related to the pack, because we talked about the 90 kilowatt club. I wanted to give you my experience too, that I noticed that just like you said, one day your car went in the service, it was only charging at 90 kilowatts max. Next thing you know, it comes back and now you have higher rate of charge at the superchargers. I just one day noticed that I was getting a higher rate, and there was no announcement by Tesla. My car hadn't gone in the service. It's just kind of how Tesla does things that I've noticed a lot. They don't have a press department. They don't announce things. They
yeah,
give it to you. And I think that the reason why they did that 90 kilowatt cap in the beginning was because they were concerned about warranty claims. They were concerned about killing off their battery packs. And I think when they realized that that wasn't happening, they just lifted it, suddenly.
yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, they don't really tell you too much. It just kind of happens, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I had a bit of a theory because I'm very privileged in the fact that I do have two cars, and
Yes.
I had a number of occasions happen in the early days. So the door handles, I know you don't have them on the Model X, but I thought the door handles were the best thing since sliced bread, as we
They're
say.
cool. They're cool. Very cool.
They're
Yeah,
so cool until they go wrong. Until
that's
they
right.
go wrong, and then they're very expensive and they're a pain in the backside. But I had an occasion, and like I say, in the early days of Teslas in this country, generally it was a rich person's toy for the
Yes.
weekend.
Same in the
Uh,
United States. Yeah, same in the
yeah,
United States.
celebrities, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So it was very rare that a working class lad like myself owned two of them.
Uh-huh.
And so what I found really quite interesting was that on one particular day, my door handle on the driver's side of my car stopped working, and then my brother, who was my second driver at the time, turned up in the other car, and he said, "You're not going to believe it, but my driver's side handle stopped working."
Oh,
Both cars had
oh,
exactly the same fault on exactly the same day, and I'm quite stubborn, so we left him for the time being, and about a week later, on the same day again, both door handles started working. So I know we love a good conspiracy theory, but there it is right there, sort of, so I'm always a bit, because at the end of the day, the car is one big computer with four wheels,
exactly. Well, I mean,
and as
I've
we
always,
know, you can
well,
do
just
anything
like
to a
you
computer.
pointed out there, Paul, about the door handles, like you think, well, maybe somehow someone remotely did that, right? Because it could happen. I mean,
Yeah,
just like someone could remotely disable our car, or say it was the battery pack has failed, or it might drive itself off a cliff because we have
yeah.
free supercharging. That would kind of make sense in a way, although I wish it never happens.
Yeah, and like I say, the cars generally were owned by very, very rich people.
Yes.
That, I mean, I think it was £1,500 for a new door handle in the other days. But
Oh
the
man,
kind of people that own Teslas were the kind of people that went, "Oh, that stopped working. Let's take it
that's
to
right.
Tesla."
That's
They mend it and they charge them 1,500. They don't bat an eyelid at that. So,
that's
my
right.
conspiracy theory was it was a very good way to make revenue
Yeah, you're
in
right.
the early days, when we know the company was struggling, for revenue sort of thing.
Yes.
But
Let me give an
that's only just a disclaimer. That's just my theory, and it's not.
yes, your theory. Well, I'm gonna corroborate your theory because I want to give an example of what happened in the United States around the same time. I was looking to buy my car at the end of 2016, Model X, which is a little bit more money than Model S. And I
Yeah,
could tell you, looking around, researching, there's a lot of uncertainty, like we pointed out here in this conversation. But one thing I found an article that listed the average income of the average Model X buyer. And even now in the United States, I think the average income is about, I don't know, $50,000 a household, something like that,
yeah,
right? Well, back in the day in 2016, The average Model X income was $500,000 a year in the United States.
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
say, what?
It's a rich
That's
person's toy, wasn't
unbelievable.
it? Yeah. 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 Which is why when I used to tell people it was a taxi, they couldn't believe it. They wouldn't believe it, you know. So
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it was quite novel. But yeah, it's and another thing as well is, I mean, I haven't got autopilot. I'm on the original autopilot one, so I've got less cameras, so we don't get the dash cam feature. And
Yeah.
for example, I think on my two cars, well, on my first year as having my car as a taxi, I think I paid £8,000 for a year's insurance
Mm. Oh,
because there was no spares, you know, there was nobody doing it. It
yeah.
was a real risk. So to lower my insurance policy, I had a dash cam installed, professionally installed, front
Okay.
and rear. And I always find it quite weird that whenever your car goes into Tesla for any work done, the first thing they do is unplug your dash cameras so that
Uh-huh.
you can't record what's going on. Because
That's
I
right.
can just imagine a spotty little teenage IT geek sat there with his feet up eating a sausage roll or something, pretending to work on your car, and he's actually just tapping a few keys on a. You know, it's like I
Yeah,
say,
you don't know when they turn it. Yeah, it's like it's gone into a ghosted itself. You know, you can't
that's
see
it.
it on
Yeah,
your app or anything. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's
well, also one of the things I want to mention also about the superchargers is that you mentioned yours. You will see a peak of about 130 kilowatts on your battery pack. I've got the 90. I have observed a low 160 kilowatts just for
yeah,
a moment in
yeah.
time. It doesn't happen all the time, but I have noticed that. So I'm getting faster speeds than I've ever received in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'd say as well. I mean, we've just got the version 4 uh, chargers popping up every now and again, and I was told actually by a member of Tesla staff that the I don't know how true this is, but the plan is version 2 and version 3
Right.
with the shorter cables.
Yes.
If that is currently an open network, that is going to eventually be closed back to just Teslas,
Ah.
and then the version 4 charger with the longer cable which can reach anywhere around a car, so you don't lose bays. That will be the open network. But particularly in UK, you can be on a version 3 charger, which is supposed to be 250 kilowatt for the newer
Right.
cars, and it can be stuck at 60 kilowatts sometimes. You know, so
Yeah.
sometimes the chargers themselves don't perform as well. And then but you can go back to the same charger on another day, another time of the day, and it's whacking the power out. So I think,
Yep.
particularly in the UK, one of the oversights by the British government has been power generation. And the ironic thing is we've actually got a power station just down the road from us, which is coal power station.
Right.
And I think due to the investment in solar, in the big
Yes.
solar fields, you know, I don't know what it's like where you are, but
Yes.
wintertime we get 6 hours, 6, 7 hours worth of daylight, and I think there was a bit of a shortfall in power generation, so they actually had to take a coal power station out of mothball and recommission it. So we've actually been burning coal in the UK to
Wow.
create electric to put in our clean electric cars. So there's a bit of an oversight power generation wise in the UK.
I see. I see. Well, let me also give you some of my experiences on these subjects. Number one, like you said, I have noticed that certain stalls I'll pull up to, it's just not pulling the max charge rate. It's rare, but it does happen. And I've talked to some Tesla techs at some of the chargers because they're there repairing and maintaining these things on a regular basis. And you and I are there all the time, so I see these people. I talk to them, and they've told me that a lot of times it's just an indication that there's something wrong with the cable, and they'll get a alert and they'll come out and they'll change the cable on that stall, and then it'll be back to normal. It's just like
yeah,
a wear item, I guess, is what they tell me.
yeah,
But another thing is, in the United States, at least from what I understand, it may be worldwide, but I don't know. I know that one of the big things people say is like, you mentioned a coal-fired power plant supplying electricity for an electric car. People say, oh, it's not environmentally friendly because of that. But from what I understand in the United States, at least, Tesla purchases all of their electricity for their superchargers when they purchase it through the avenues that are renewable sources only, because you can pay
yeah,
extra, right? And you can get it, make sure it's from renewable sources. A lot of folks don't know that, and they say it's from coal. I'm like, well, not in the United States, at least. I don't know how it is
yeah.
over there in the UK.
But I know obviously Elon Musk's obviously got fingers in pies with, is it Solar City? So he's got a large
Yes.
solar
Yeah.
network over there anyway, hasn't he? So I mean, yeah, it makes sense. And that's part of the reason why we have the solar put on the house as well, just so that I could guarantee that my electric was clean. So
Yes.
yeah, it's getting there. It's just unfortunately the only sustainable method of regular clean electric is nuclear,
Mm,
and it takes 25 years from planning to building and commissioning. You're
right.
looking decades for a nuclear power. But I believe at the moment, Rolls-Royce in this country are working on smaller nuclear reactors. So the plan is, rather than having one large reactor to do mass areas, you will have a smaller reactor which provides city power. So that'd be quite interesting.
Okay.
Things are changing so quickly with the technology.
Yep.
Who knows where we'll be in 10 years? It could be a
Yeah. Yeah.
totally different world.
Well, let me also address the question you asked me earlier about degradation. What I witnessed was that the first year and a half or so, I saw almost all the degradation. I went from, zero degradation at delivery to about 15%, 14, 15%. That's where I am now. It remains. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but it's not changing. At least it doesn't seem like it has for me. I don't know what you witnessed on that.
I mean, we get variations just in the winter. I don't know what your winters are like when it gets down to zero. My main route is across to Manchester. We have to go over the Pennines, which is it's not mountains, it's hills.
Yeah.
But when you get a little bit of altitude about, yeah, and it drops down to zero, maybe 5 below, obviously in centigrade, you can lose a third of your range. And even charging, it won't hit the figures. So I get 270 miles in the summer. In the winter, it might only charge 205.
Mhm.
It just loses
Okay.
a couple of miles, but it
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
back the following summer. So yeah, they just go on holiday for a while.
All right, that makes sense. And just for viewers who aren't familiar, that's common. I'd say even in an internal combustion engine, you're going to lose mileage in super cold weather and or high altitude in an internal combustion engine. In an electric vehicle, it'll be super cold weather. You're going to lose range, but only for that super cold weather. Once the weather warms up, it comes back. Is that what your experience is?
Correct, yeah. And definitely sounds, I do things like, because you have to remember in an electric car as well, everything that you have turned on is a drain on that battery.
Yeah.
So when you start putting the heaters on, your heated steering wheel, your heated seats, they're lovely, but you can
Yep.
see your range go down pretty quickly. So I do in the winter sometimes, I will literally have everything on for the clients when I take them somewhere. And then if I'm coming back empty, I turn everything off and I put my coat on and I drive in my coat so that that's the best range extender ever. A nice warm coat in the winter.
I've done that. Yeah, I've turned off make sure my phone's unplugged, that I don't have a power inverter running for anything. Turned all that off, just like you're saying. But and kind of along those lines, you're only doing that when your battery state of charge is starting to get very low, like you're near empty or getting close to it. Right? It's going to be a close call. Have you
Yeah,
ever gotten to the point where your battery is shut down because you've gotten so low?
I've run out of electric once, and it was I've not had the car that long, and
Uh-huh.
I've been up to a place called York City, to drop somebody off, and it was torrential rain, and I was driving down the dual carriageway, so a two-lane carriageway. We can do 70 miles an hour down there, and I was approaching a roundabout. And have you ever experienced that thing where you get error messages come up on your screen, and you get that and they just
Yes,
kept
that
coming?
sound. Yeah, that sound.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it haunts you. It haunts you. So I got a load of error messages and I lost everything. The main thing I lost was I lost my regen charging. Um, but this was in the original warranty, so it was all free to get it fixed.
But did the,
Um,
did the car, when you heard that beep beep beep, did the pack shut down? Did your car stop
no,
moving?
it was just initially this was just faults coming up. So
I see.
I had plenty of electric to get back, but because I lost my regen, my my watts per mile went from 300, which I normally sit about,
Right.
to nearly 600 watts per
Oh,
mile.
yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. I lost everything. I lost so many sensors. So I didn't panic. I put in, and actually the computer itself suggested a charging station to go to.
Hmm.
And this is in the early days, so there wasn't that many charging stations.
Right.
So I headed towards the charging station, and then ironically, the motorway it was on, the inside lane was having work done on it. There were
Oh,
retarmac in the lane. So
my
the
God.
service station was actually closed.
Oh
So
no.
I accessed it via a service road and got to the chargers. But when I got to the chargers, they were turned off. Everything was turned off. Um, so I phoned Tesla and I said, your car's just sent me to a charger that's turned off. And I was speaking to a guy in the Netherlands, a Dutch guy, and he said, "Let me check for you." And I said, he said, "Yes, you are correct. They are turned off." And I went, "That's great." I said, "But I've got 6 miles range and I live 20 miles away. Um, so what do I do?" And he said, "Well, he said you can try and get home if you want." And he offered me a free tow if I broke down. And so I thought, you know what, I'll have a go because this was in the middle of the night.
Right.
So I managed to squeeze a few extra miles out going downhill, and but
Yeah.
eventually, like I say, the power pack cuts out. You get a very, very short period of time to pull over, and this is one of the things that people always wonder. In a petrol car, when the light comes on, you've still got a good gallon left. You've still got a good 30, 40 miles. In
Right.
an electric car, when it says zero, it means zero. You know, there's no leeway. So
Mm.
I pulled over and managed to get off the road. I waited for 5 hours to get recovered, and
5 hours.
actually he took me back. He took me back to the charging station that I was originally at, and in the 5 hours I'd waited to get recovered, they'd finished the roadworks and it'd been turned back on again.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I should have just sat there, but yeah, it was quite a horrendous evening. So, but that is the only time, and I now vow I never go below 20%. I always leave
Below
20% for the
20.
back.
Okay. Well, let
Yeah,
me tell you my experience, which is a little bit different than yours. Okay. I've noticed a trend over the course of ownership. I've
yeah,
noticed that when I first got my car, that zero wasn't actually zero. I've actually got a video because I started a YouTube channel called adigitalnomad.net where I documented my ownership of the car. I'm still doing that. And I have a
yeah.
video in there when I arrived back from a flight and my car had run down to zero. It had run down to zero. Okay.
All right.
Because I didn't have any way to charge it. This was back in the early days, like you said. And so the closest charger was 8 miles away. And I was like, well, what do I do? Do I just call a tow truck? It says zero. Or do I just try to drive and see how far it goes? and,
Yeah.
and I did. I drove and I made it 8 miles to the supercharger. This was
Wow.
this was early. This is early in my ownership experience. Not that many miles, not much time on
Yeah.
the pack. Okay, but here this has changed over the time because at one point I have a video about this. I brought it down to about 5 miles, and I was I was en route to a supercharger, and all of a sudden the beep 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 beep, and within 10 seconds it shuts down. It says it's going to shut down. That was it. I called Tesla. I said, "Look, I think I need my battery pack's gone bad. I probably need a warranty replacement
Yeah.
because it says 5 miles right here, and
Yeah.
it shut down."
Yeah.
And I had to call a tow truck. Thankfully, I had roadside assistance, not from Tesla, because I was way outside of Tesla's general warranty. Okay, and
Yeah.
they said it wasn't covered. They told me that's not unless the pack actually fails, and of course they would get
Yeah.
notification that it failed. This one just got too low, even though it didn't get to zero. And I learned from that. I was like, well, I guess I can't let it go below 10 miles of range anymore. Because at
Yeah.
that point I probably had, close to 200,000 miles on that battery pack. And I was like, that's probably a wise thing. You don't know
Yeah.
where bottom is even on a gas car. You're not totally sure where the bottom is. So it happened again though. Next time was about 6 months later, and I had about 13 miles of range indicated. And I recorded both these are documented on my
Yeah.
and I sent the videos to Tesla. I'm like, look, it happened again. Do I get a new battery pack? And they said no, because as you and I discussed, we don't have a percentage loss. And even that percentage loss at 13 miles isn't warrantable, even on the newer warranties. And it's at the bottom,
Yeah.
not at the top, it's at the bottom. So what I've discovered through the Tesla high mileage group and seeing other people's experiences is that you really never want to go under 10%, especially if you're over 100,000 miles on the pack,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it could just shut down at any time, right? And they're
Yeah.
not going to cover that. You're going to be inconvenienced. It's kind of like your gas car. You would never take it down to 1 milliliter of fuel in the tank, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, I'll be honest. I'll be honest as well. So when I first got the car, obviously it was a very quick car, and
Yeah.
even the original, the night it's still 4.2 seconds. I think it is 0 to 60,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is faster than the a lot of cars.
Yes.
So the first year, I probably did drive it like I stole it, and I used to have a little bit of a competition with myself to see how many cars I could overtake on the way back from Manchester. So it was. But these days, it's much more about range. And my latest, I always use the graph feature on your center console.
Yes.
Uh, so I always do it on average over 30 miles. And I always find that much more accurate, because you can be driving normally, and there's probably a 30-mile difference between what the graph says and
Ah,
what your dashboard says.
I
So
see.
that's where you lose that mileage, I think. But then I have a competition now where I see how low I can get the watts per mile, and my record is 150 watts of power per
Wow.
mile. And I think on my car, to achieve what's on the dashboard, you have to achieve 305 watts per mile.
Right.
So if I could, not that you could, because a lot of downhills and all that kind of good stuff into the green, but I mean that battery pack potentially would do over 400 miles if you could keep that kind of figure. So
Yep.
yeah, but it's quite a fun game to play when you're on
Yeah.
your own. So
Well, it's hypermiling. Have you heard that term, hypermiling?
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what it
it's
is. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like a lot of that too. You probably notice if you accelerate as you're nearing the bottom of a hill and
yeah,
accelerate through there until it starts to go up, and then slow down at the very top, and then keep repeating that. That'll get you another hypermiling trick, another few miles of range out of your
yeah,
pack.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. There's and actually, I use more electric on my way to Manchester than I do on the way back. Believe it
Huh?
or not, there's quite, and it's sort of 10 to 15 miles difference in
Uphill versus
range.
downhill, huh?
Yeah. Just different slopes and different, yeah. So it is about learning how to drive the car, um,
Yes.
and like you say, over the past couple of years, really, there has been a lot more manufacturers enter the market. I mean, my favourite. I hate saying this on a Tesla, but my favourite electric car at the moment is the ID Buzz. I love the thing. I'd love one of those.
Oh, really?
But they're just bringing out the GTX twin motor this year, 7-seater. I would love one of those, but you don't get the supercharging.
Which
But
manufacturer is that?
Volkswagen, the ID
Volkswagen.
Buzz,
Oh, the
the
bus.
California,
Oh, the
yeah,
bus.
Buzz.
Yes, yes. Okay, I
Sorry, I'm
got
a
you.
bit
Yes.
nasal. Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit nasal. I've got a cold at the moment. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I love the design of it. I love the car, and
Well, that's
but
been
you
very
do,
anticipated. Very
yeah,
anticipated. It's like
yeah,
the old bus from the 60s, right? It's like electrified.
correct, yeah, retro styling, like it's lovely. But you do see a lot more electric cars at the side of the road now, and I
Oh my
always do
gosh.
wonder. I do wonder whether they've misjudged things and run out of electric. And the top one that I see, I would say, is probably the Audi e-tron GT. The
Yes.
Porsche.
Yep.
That seems to be the top electric car at the side of the road at the moment.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, it's
Well,
quite
let
interesting.
me ask you something else about your experience with the Tesla battery pack on your car. Something I've noticed, and I'm a let me keep in mind I'm a heavy user. We're not talking about me here. We're talking about you, but I just want to give you an idea so you can understand how much wear is on my pack. Of course, not only do I have 280,000 plus miles, close to 290 now, but my wife and I car camp on a regular basis at night. We work out of the car during the day, even when it's not rolling, and we tow long distance a double axle box trailer. So
Yeah,
we have a ton of wear. Okay. Also, before I forget, I'm still in the original brake pads, believe it or not. Even with all that,
really.
still have not changed them. But something I've noticed is this: because I exclusively supercharge, I don't charge in at home or slow charge at night like you do. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but what I've seen is it used to be if I was to plug in on a supercharger, if I went away and went shopping for 45 minutes to an hour, by the time I came back, it was just about full and it was just about to shut off, or it did shut off because it was complete. The charge cycle was complete. But
Yeah,
now what I notice is that it takes me, once I get to probably 95% state of charge, it takes me another 2 hours probably
to get
to
that
get to
100%.
that top part. Like that, it never used to be like that. You see that too?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah. The last few percent is excruciating, and I only really do it if I've got time to spare, sort of thing, time to waste. But what I generally do is I'll supercharge when I'm out and about, and if I've got time in the day to go home, I put it on charge at home on the AC, so you just top that last bit up. And I think that runs. I think the lowest I've ever seen my AC charging is 4 miles an hour. So if I've got 3 hours at home, that last 12 miles just goes in there nice and easy then, sort of thing.
Okay. And then when you do get all the way up to the top, do you drive off right away? Does it sit there at 100%? Like, how do you treat that?
So it'll be sat there for a maximum of an hour, 2 hours, basically. Because I do sort of early morning runs, which is 1 o'clock. This morning, I've got a job tomorrow morning at 2 o'clock in the morning pickup from Birmingham, and Birmingham's an hour away, so I'll be setting off about sort of midnight. I get down there and I just go to a nearby charger, charge and wait at the charger, and then go in to get people. So, but then I have like a lunchtime run, and then I'll have an evening run as well. So I think so. I get several hours in between. So it's never sat at 100% more than a couple of hours, really. And I think that's the key. I think the key is not to leave them sat still too long and not to leave them charged for too long. I think if you're constantly using the car, I think that's where you're wearing better, I think.
So yeah, so you're saying it's a machine, it likes to be used, but the worst thing you could do, tell me if this is correct, the worst thing you can do is charge to 100% and let it sit there for a couple of days.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think that's that messes with the batteries.
Okay, so but you're always using yours, so that's great. So that is another, I think, a rumor or a myth is like, just like the previous myth was, don't supercharge much. I think we've disproven that that's not a factor. We've shown we've got like 1,000,000 miles between just two of the cars we're talking about right now. We're getting
Yeah.
close to that range, and on the original pack and motors. And then the other part is just don't let it sit. Right, that's the other thing. You can charge to 100% though, right? I think that Elon has even changed his own things that he conveys, saying it's okay. But I think,
Yeah.
like you said, just don't let it sit there unused at 100%. That's when you
Yeah.
might have a
That's
problem.
that's when it starts getting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like as you get older, if you sit still too long, you get a bit creaky, don't you? It
Yeah.
takes you a little bit to get going again. So I think it's a very similar thing with the Teslas.
All right. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Now the last part of the video here, we saved the best for last, I guess, or at least the most detail for last. What about actual maintenance and repairs or any accidents that you have had with your 450,000-mile Model S? What can you tell us about that?
So I had an accident very early on autopilot, and I'll be honest with you, I've had two incidents on autopilot, and I don't use it at all. I don't trust it. So the first one was I was heading in the early hours of the morning down to Birmingham, and I got onto the motorway, a 3-lane motorway, and I tried to engage autopilot, and this was just after an update for the car, and the car violently pulled to the left as I engaged it. So I snapped the wheel back, tried again, tried it 3 times, and each time it pulled to the left. So I left it, and then about half an hour later, I tried again, and it engaged, and it was within the lanes. And I used to love autopilot, and the fact that when you sat in the lane and you engaged autopilot, and you'd feel the car shift either slightly left or slightly right,
Correct.
as if to say, now I'm in the middle of the lane. It was so precise, and it was reassuring. So everything was back to normal. And then I went to change lane using the indicator, when you indicate and then it checks and changes lane for you.
Yes.
And it seemed to dither a little bit. It wasn't as accurate and as quick as what it was normally. And so I disengaged it again and I drove. And then later on, I was on a dual carriageway, so only 2 lanes, and there was cones, there was roadworks in the left-hand lane. So I went to indicate using the autopilot again, and again it dithered round. So I turned it off, changed lanes, and I put the autopilot back on. And as I approached the cones, the car literally grabbed the wheel, moved within my hands. It literally jerked the wheel left in my hands on the wheel, and we started hitting cones. And it was there was cones all over the place, and ironically, you know, the big arrow sign, it sort of came flying towards the windscreen and pinged off between the sunroof and the windscreen. And my first thought was, I've just spent 11 years in the Middle East, and I managed to keep my head on my shoulders, only to nearly be beheaded by a road sign.
Oh,
And, I lost the wing mirror. The bonnet was dinted. The front wing was dinted. The headlight was damaged,
right.
and it was all down to, you know. So I phoned Tesla up and I said, "Your car's just tried to kill me."
Oh my
And
God.
you know, I reported this on Facebook, and you get all the warriors that said, "Well, you should have your
Yeah.
hands on the wheel." My hands were firmly on the wheel in the 10 to 2 position. Admittedly, I wasn't tense because that's the whole point in having autopilot. You're supposed to
Right.
be able to relax,
Right.
but with your hands on the wheel.
Right.
But it jerked the wheel, and I could not stop it doing it with my hands. And Tesla actually, so that I don't know what it's like in the States, but one of the laws in the UK is that the driver is in overall command of the vehicle.
Yes. Yes.
So that then gets Tesla out of the strife, and it's the driver. So I was sat in the behind the wheel, so it's my fault.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but that is the rule that they're trying to change to be able to have fully autonomous driving. so
They
to
have to,
quote
of
the
course.
yeah, so to quote the rule that they're trying to change was kind of ironic at the time. But and
Well,
because it was in the very early days, there was
yeah.
£7,500 worth of damage.
Mm. And of
So
course, you probably had to go to an independent body shop because there probably were not any Tesla corporate-owned collision centers like there are now, right?
there was recommended, but they were the ones that really charged the serious money. Like I say, 7.5 grand. I took it to a guy in the end
Yeah.
that is a guy that restores cars, you know, classic
Right.
cars. So he knows how to use, for example, an English wheel. And he can get dints out of, and he literally repaired everything,
I see.
the bonnet, all the major panels, and I think in the end it cost me about 750 quid. So
Oh,
he moved the decimal point a few points upon it.
okay,
So it
well,
wasn't too much.
let me clarify. When you were recommended a shop, that's like a Tesla certified body shop. That's still a independent shop. It's not corporate owned by Tesla Corporation because in the United States and worldwide now, I don't know if you know this or not, but they have launched their own body shops that are owned by Tesla corporate. It's kind of like a service center that
Yeah,
specializes only in the Tesla collision repair.
yeah. They were independents, but I think they've done like Tesla courses and things like that. And
Yeah.
I know there's certain parts and panels that Tesla won't sell you as an individual over the counter. Um, they will only provide them to assigned body shops, I think. So
Yes. Yeah. And because
kind
like
of means that you have to,
yeah, I had some repairs. I had 2 accidents, and I had to have my Falcon Wing door replaced and my driver's door, the front quarter panel, a whole bunch of other stuff. But I went to the Tesla-owned collision center 2 years ago. They're brand new here in the United States, and everything was replaced by Tesla with all Tesla parts, and they
yeah,
only repair Teslas, so it's been a different experience nowadays. But in the past, that was not possible, and they just like we talked about, they never made this announcement to people that these even exist. They don't have a press department, so people just find out about them randomly.
yeah,
That's how it
yeah.
goes.
It's I mean, the good thing in the UK in the early days was that because Teslas are so fast, people have got a nasty habit of crashing them. And I think at one
Yeah.
point I'd found 6 Model S's in various scrapyards around the country,
Oh my gosh.
and but they were all different corners. So you could have built a brand new Model S
That's right.
out of all these cars, sort of, you know. So I bought a few headlights and things like that, you know, over the years, because you know, the eyebrow, the daytime running lights, when they burn out, I've had to buy new headlights and things like that.
Yep. Well, let me also clarify too, if people have not, anybody watches has never driven a Tesla, Tesla doesn't make slow cars. I think the slowest car they ever made, zero or not, as you say over there in the UK, to 60 is about 5 seconds. Everything's faster than that.
Yeah,
So, the fastest car I'd ever driven, I'd say I'm not into performance cars, but the fastest car I'd ever driven before my Tesla was probably half the speed acceleration.
yeah. And
Well,
also in the early days, they were all rear wheel drive as well, which didn't help, did it? So
that's right.
so that
Yeah.
was yeah. So yeah, that was quite a scary experience in the wet and in the ice. So yeah.
So, but yours are dual motor, is that right? The one that you have is
It
dual.
is, yeah, it is, and I'll be honest with it, it is the best thing ever. So, like I say, when I go to Manchester, we go over the hills, the Pennines,
Yeah.
and because it's, well, I think yours is half a ton more, but mine's 2.5 tons worth of car. It's 4-wheel drive with instant torque.
Yep.
It's one of the best cars I've ever driven in snow for
Nice.
traction ever. The only thing that you have to get used to is if you have regen braking on max, like I do, when you go down a hill in snow,
Oh yeah.
if you have your foot off the brake, it tends to skid sideways. So you have to get used to having your foot on the accelerator whilst going downhill in snow, which is the most unnatural thing to be doing. Your body tells you no, but as soon as you can master that, then they're fantastic cars.
So okay,
Yeah.
so you need to kind of finesse that. You need to finesse that accelerator with your foot. Yeah, and like you said, you
Yeah.
wouldn't do that on an internal combustion engine. You'd be finessing the brake.
Brake, yeah.
So
So
yeah.
it's totally unnatural thing to do, but once you've got your head around it and you can do it, then yeah, they're fantastic cars in the snow and in the bad weather. So
That's what I've experienced too, the dual motors. And let me go back to autopilot. You mentioned you have autopilot 1. For folks not familiar, Tesla had autopilot 1 that they stopped producing in about the middle of October 2016. So yours must have been built just before then, if you have
yeah,
autopilot 1 hardware, because mine has autopilot 2. And but Paul, just like you described, I have noticed large variations in the performance with different software releases. Okay, so it's not there. It's not a self-driving vehicle. You have to pay attention, like you said. And when you described how it jerked the wheel out of your hand, that was probably around the same time when there was that accident in the United States. I remember in California with a Model X, and it jerked the wheel out of the person's hand apparently, and it went right into a crash attenuator instead of cones. Do you remember that?
yeah. Well, that's what I was told after the fact as well by Tesla. They said you should never use the autopilot around cones because it's radar based. So if you think about stealth technology, it's basically stealth, isn't it? It's a curved surface, so pinging signals back all over the place. You've also got a light reflective strip around it, which probably absorbs and deflects radar to different directions. But obviously, none of that was sending the hand over the car, admittedly. But yeah, I mean, they don't like cones. And unfortunately, when they look forward to autonomous driving, there's always going to be cones. So
that's right.
That's probably why they've gone to the camera-based system now as opposed to radar.
Yeah, so you know that. That's good. Actually, I wanted to tell you in case you didn't know, because mine's original AP2. I like the OG original AP2 system with the radar. But at one point, about a year or so ago, they just turned the radar off. They just disabled it, and I noticed a downgrade during that time. All of a sudden, things became sloppy. All of a sudden, and you don't know what to expect. So you have to be paying attention, like you said, right? You have to be able to control the car regardless of what it does.
Yeah. So after that incident, I generally only really used autopilot then for when you sat in traffic, so you can relax a little bit more and you're not constantly moving, stopping, moving, stopping. It was very good for that, just moving forwards gradually.
Yes.
But then that's when I had my second incident with autopilot where, so obviously with it being radar based, you've got all the little cars around you, which are obviously all Model S's on the screen. And look, I was sat there stationary. Luckily, I had my foot covering the brake, but autopilot was engaged. And all of a sudden, the radar dropped out and all the cars on the screen disappeared.
Oh.
So the car thought that the road in front was clear, but there was actually 2 car lengths to the car in front of me. And the car started to accelerate, in 0 to 60. And I had to slam the anchors on the brake. And luckily, I just nearly, narrowly avoided a rear end shunt into the person in front of me. And I reported this to Tesla, and they said, "Oh no, that doesn't happen." They said it would basically stop. It wouldn't accelerate. And I said, "Well, it did." And I nearly had a heart attack and had to change my underwear, sort of thing. So since that point, I've never ever used autopilot again. I prefer to be in the hands of my own destiny, as it were, sort of thing. So
Yeah, and as you described, you're responsible anyway. So,
correct, yeah,
it
yeah.
may be the best way to go. And like we talked about, Teslas are very fast accelerating cars. So if that car thinks there's nothing in front and it pushes down on an accelerator, I
Oh,
can
it
only
goes,
imagine
yeah.
what you were thinking at the time. It was, I'm sure it was scary.
Yeah, I've also had a friend in the taxi business. He had an accident, and it was actually a Tesla he ran into the back of, and
Mm.
that was actually a phantom braking incident where the
Yeah.
Tesla
Oh yeah.
slammed the anchors on, and then he ran into the back of it. But unfortunately, in British law, I don't know, it's like in America, whoever runs into the back of a car is basically liable.
Right.
So he found himself liable for an accident, and the lady actually got out of the car and said, "I'm really sorry, I don't know what happened. The car just suddenly braked," and so that was phantom braking, which is quite a problem as well, I think,
Oh my
or
gosh.
it was.
So the phantom braking on the Tesla in front caused such a fast stop that the your friend smashed into the car.
Into the back of it, yeah, yeah.
Oh my,
So
yeah,
on the motorway, but then unfortunately he was liable because
right.
in British law he ran into her, sort of thing,
I get it.
So
It's the same in the United States, and I've experienced the phantom braking. I have noticed it's gotten better because I used to do a course on my Digital Nomad YouTube channel where I would go through it. Every time I go through the course, it would phantom brake at this one spot. It had to do with the sun and trees shading the roadway, things like that. But sure enough,
yeah,
every time it would phantom brake, and I would test it each time a new software iteration came out. I would test the same course, and eventually it got better, and so I have seen improvement. But as you point out, you have to pay attention. You have to be in control of that car because it's
correct,
not
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, and I mean, in the early days, there were people doing silly things like falling asleep at the wheel whilst he was on autopilot. There was a YouTuber that got in the back of the car, and
I
there was
saw
people.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, it was just silly. Yeah, people
yeah,
taking
because
advantage.
and the reason why for that, you probably noticed the way Tesla's operator presence system has worked. Even now, I think there is a operator presence sensor at the bottom of the seat, but it doesn't use it. It only uses it that the seatbelt's buckled. So as long as you buckle the seatbelt, you can jump into the back seat. Don't do this at home. I'm just telling you, this is how people do it. And then
Yeah,
it still works. And just like you, I don't know if you noticed on your system, but on my system, when I first got my car, it had the tug system. And you had to tug the wheel, which you still do.
yeah,
But it had such low resolution telemetry that it couldn't tell if it was me, my hand, or if I had stuck a weight on the wheel. It could
yeah,
not tell the difference. But in the last year and a half, they released a software update, and now it knows. It knows if you have anything on the wheel aside from your hand.
yes, yeah, yeah. So it's, but like I say, it's a facility I don't really use, to be honest, these days, and I don't know. Like I say, it's just I always wonder. Tesla are very quick to sort of deny any responsibility. So I
Right.
think, if you want to put yourself in that position, then that's great. But I prefer to be in the
Yeah,
hands of my own destiny, as it were, sort of thing. So
I get you. And until they claim that it's level 5, I know in your car, since it's AP1, it won't ever be capable or be supported by Tesla. But in my car, it's AP2. According to Elon's promise, if he makes good on it, if my car keeps rolling, it will do level 5 at some point, whenever
yeah,
that is. I don't know when that
yeah,
is, but
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes.
well,
Yeah.
when you're looking for your new Model X, are you looking for AP1 or AP2, or does that not matter for you?
It's not really a big factor. It's more about the superchargers. So there are a few hen's teeth, very very rare cars that have the 100 kilowatt battery pack and free supercharging. I think there was only about 500 or something like made. So there are. So I would. So it's all about the. I say it has to be ordered before the February 2017. So they're very very rare, but there are a few knocking around. Um, so that's my idea. But I think I'm probably going to end up with a 90D. I
But
think.
you're right. Well, because I can remember that time. Originally, Elon said you must order by December 31st, 2016. So I did. I ordered like December 28th. But
Yeah.
then they said, "Oh no, we're extending that now, same deal, to the 15th." And I remember when I was in December of 2016, um, I said, "Can I just order the 100 pack without the
Yeah.
performance?" Because they just came out with that. They said, "No, if you do that, then you are going to be under the new plan, which doesn't include that." And I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll stick with the 90D," and I did. But then January 3rd, they said, "Okay, now we're extending this to the 15th of January 2017." And at that point, like you said, the 100D non-performance was available. So
Yes.
some
Yeah.
folks made the order. You had to place the order in that 2-week time frame. And as
Yeah.
long as you did, and as long as wait, the other caveat is Tesla can't get their hands on it, right? Because if Tesla gets
Yeah.
their hands on this car before you do, they're going to remove that from the vehicle.
Yeah. And I believe in the UK as well, I think if it goes back into the motor trade, so if that car somehow ends up at auction, in a motor trade auction, I think Tesla also remove it there as well.
Oh, okay, okay.
So but the great thing is when you know people from Tesla, you can nip in and say, "Can you quickly check this VIN number for me and make sure it's got SC01?" So I can do my checks before I buy the car, sort of thing. But yeah.
Okay, well, another thing that's really bad is no, like I said, I could have ordered the P100D instead of the 90D when I did, and at the time it was at least $30,000 to $35,000 premium for the performance, and I didn't know anything about the reliability, but I can tell you with the group over here, I'm glad I did not order the performance because yeah, it's faster, but you may have seen Paul, they have a coolant line that runs through that motor on the performance motor only in the back, and it leaks.
Yeah.
It's a chronic problem, so there is a difference in reliability there. The
Yeah.
performance is not going to be as reliable for that factor.
And I hate to sound really, really boring, but like you say, Tesla don't make slow cars. So
Yep.
yeah, it's not a performance, but it's quick, isn't it? And
Yes.
at the
Oh,
end
of
of the
course.
day, in the UK these days. It's so easy to lose your. There's so many speed cameras. There's so many on the smart motorways they call them.
Right.
There's so many speed cameras these days. It's so easy to lose your license.
Right.
So I think it's just a self-preservation thing, not having a P. To be quite honest, it's
You're probably right. Yeah, because
uh,
you don't need it. You got more than you need already. Is the reality.
correct. Yeah. So I mean, like the new Model S that does 1.9 seconds. I mean, that's
Plan.
just crazy. Plaid, yeah, the plaid. Yeah, I
The
mean,
motorway,
why?
Paul. The motorways there in the UK. You mentioned you passed people on the way back. Do you have a limited access motorway that's similar to the autobahn where you don't have speed limits there?
Motion detected.
No. So we have motorways which are 70 miles an hour. We have A roads which are single carriageway, and that's 60 miles an hour. But actually, over the last couple of years, a lot of that's been reduced down to 50 miles an hour. And then in any built-up areas, it's 30 miles an hour. And I'll be honest, I got some speeding points going through Nottingham, where there is a stupid amount of speed cameras there.
Oh,
And it's one of the things with electric cars. The car is so responsive. When you're doing 30 miles an hour, if you move your big toe, you can accelerate 10 miles an hour.
right.
So I got caught doing 36 but there's no gears, there's no range of gears, there's
That's
no
right.
noise, there's nothing. You literally now have to spend more time looking at the speedo to make sure you're not doing over 30 miles an hour in a built-up area than
Right.
actually observing the road. So Tesla could really do with a heads-up display. I think that'd probably be one of the best
Yes.
upgrades.
And let me tell you too that I have autopilot too. I paid for the full self-driving. I paid for all that software when I bought it. So I've got all the software levels. I've got all the upgraded hardware because when you buy the upgraded software, they continue to upgrade your hardware if needed. Okay. So
Yeah.
I've had cameras and other things upgraded on my car for no cost. And what I've noticed over the time is as long as I use it, um, they have a new feature that's just come out in the last 6 months. It's called Auto Max, and it sets the maximum speed of your Tesla automatically based on the speed limit signs, and it's very responsive.
Yeah.
It notices right away. It didn't used to be like this. It used to be like it'd go from 50 to 30, and it would take a long time to slow the car down. And like this isn't
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
usually the police are right behind that slow sign, and if you don't
Yeah.
slow down immediately, then you're caught. But the
Yeah.
new system, I can tell you, it's gotten a lot better, and I tend to use that more often than not because if I'm not paying attention to that sign on the road, this system seems to be more reliable than me anyway.
Yeah. There was a problem in the UK where when we have lorries from Europe come over, and they'll have the speed signs on the back of their lorries. So they'll have a restricted to 100 kilometers an hour,
Right.
and the Tesla actually picks up that as a speed sign. on the
Oh,
back of. So sometimes that system wouldn't work because yeah, the speed sign recognition will say 100 miles an hour, but it's
yeah,
actually on
yeah.
the back of a European lorry. So, but yeah, it's hard sometimes to be in the inner cities to the point where I don't really like going to Nottingham anymore because there are that many speed cameras. You can literally lose your license. So
Okay,
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, you're a professional driver. Yeah, you that's the worst thing. You don't want that to happen. I would agree with that.
yeah.
Okay, last thing, maintenance and repairs. What can you tell us has happened over these 450,000 miles?
So generally, it's bushes. So my car is an early car, so a lot of the running gear is actually Mercedes E-Class.
Yes,
Um, so lower control arm, front and back, upper control arms,
yep,
they generally wear. Um, the roads that I drive on, there are a lot of potholes. There's a joke at the moment in the UK that we actually want to be reinvaded by the Romans, so they come and sort the roads out because they're that bad
right.
at the
That's,
moment.
yeah,
So yeah, so
yeah.
there's a lot of potholes, cracked alloys. Believe it or not, I've never had so many cracked alloys. So I drive on the.
Oh,
It would make more sense for me to have the 19-inch alloys. You get better range, better comfort,
right,
but they just don't look very good.
right.
So
Yeah, the
so
looks. I agree. Yeah.
yeah, so I've got the 21-inch alloys, and yeah, the amount of cracked alloys we get is phenomenal. I've never seen so many.
How many have you had, do you think? Have you total can you total it up over 450,000 miles?
I had one alloy crack in 4 places on one occasion. It was that bad a whack.
So do you have to
And
throw it away if it's a,
now you're allowed 4 welds before it fails its MOT. So and it re-welded. So
I
and
see.
then generally it cracks around the same area. So it's just a slightly bigger weld. But
Right.
otherwise, yeah. And I'm very lucky that one of my presents from Tesla for the referral was I think they're called arachnid alloys or
Yeah.
something like that. They were called.
Mine was
So
a upgraded rims too. I got one of those as
really,
well. Yeah.
so I got a spare set of alloys and tires. So I do cycle through with the two cars. So we got a spare set. So yeah, but so and in fact I've just had them refurbed and painted black to match the cars. But
Right.
so yeah, bushes that I've wiring looms. The front wiring loom I've replaced
Hmm.
3 times. But I've actually now got to a point where I can quite happily take the bumper off myself and replace that. I've become a very hands-on uh, Tesla owner, sort of thing. I've actually been out and bought myself some Milwaukee tools so I can work on my own car.
Right.
Um, I've had a charging port that
Me too.
malfunctioned,
Yep.
uh, and actually I've just recently had a warning saying the sensor's not working. So I'm probably get ready for another one of those.
Yeah. So what do
Uh,
what do you think? Every maybe 150,000 or so, you're gonna need a new charge port, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. And my other car, the one that's on 370,000 miles,
Hmm.
the plastic insert is actually snapped off.
Oh,
So it's the bare metal pin. It still works perfectly well, but it's not so nice looking. What else is there? Track, sorry, drive shafts, half shafts. I've
on the
probably
front.
been through on the front. Yeah, I've probably been through about 4 sets of them.
That's
But
common. Yeah, that's
yeah,
common on the S and the X dual motor. I don't think 3 and Y have that problem, but yeah,
no.
definitely S
But
and
I've actually found, believe it or not, because I could never understand the fact that they put the standard Mercedes half shafts in. Surely they would have been better putting the ones from the AMG with the extra torque or something like. I'm presuming they've got a beefed up version. But I found a aftermarket set from a German firm
Oh,
that have lasted a lot longer than the original Teslas. So there are now more companies making aftermarket parts that do seem to be a better quality, to be quite honest,
okay.
last a lot longer. So I've been looking around for things like that. Drop link, stub links as they call it, they go every now and again, but again, that's just general wear and tear.
What is that you
Um,
said?
so the sway bar link for the steering,
Yes.
the stub links, the down parts, the really annoying little Allen key where you have to turn a span around an Allen key to get them down.
Is it
They've
mainly
been
that's
replaced.
mainly in the front, is that right?
But yeah,
Okay.
and I've been through a couple of sets of track run ends. They get damaged over time. So, but like I say, this isn't going into Tesla for a service and saying, "Oh, you need this." My car has to be MOT'd twice a year. So with the MOT every year is like a yearly. Once your car is 3 years old, it then has to go for a yearly test to
So
ensure it's
it's a
roadworthy.
full inspection by the government, basically, right?
Yeah, it's government based. Yeah. So, but my car, because it's a taxi, had to go for one when it was brand new, and it was quite funny because there was no 3-year-old car, so it wasn't even on the system. So they didn't really know what they were doing. And it was quite funny because the guy that actually inspected the car had been doing it on petrol and diesel cars for 30 years. So he checked the seat belts, checked the lights, checked the horn, windscreen washers. That's the kind of things to check. And then he casually said, "Can you pop the trunk, the hood, the bonnet as you go, or the bonnet as we say, the hood as you guys say?"
Right.
And he came from underneath with rather a confused look on his face when there was no engine there. I actually have like a little Dyson Hoover to hoover out between clients, which he had in his hands. So he thought that was the engine. And then he went away to get the emissions test and actually went to test the emissions. And I said, "I don't know where you're going to stick that because there's no exhaust." So it was all new to him. But so yeah, generally running gear. That's the main thing, running gear. So control arms, drive shafts, alloys. The interior's held up really, really well. Door handles, I've had a few failures of them. And just general early Tesla build quality issues. So you close the door and the door card moves. The door card comes off quite easily. I think it was in the video, the windscreen wiper linkage. That's quite an issue. So my bonnet, I don't know if you saw in the video, my bonnet has been eaten away by the wiper arm, which actually I treated myself to a new wiper mechanism the other day for, I think it was £380.
Mm.
That included 2 new wiper arms and new wipers. And I did that on the drive. I replaced that the other day.
Right.
So now the clearance is better, because otherwise, every time the wiper arm returns back down, it goes clunk,
Right.
clunk,
Right.
clunk,
Yeah.
clunk.
Well,
It is.
related to that, have you had to replace or service the air conditioning compressor on the car?
Yes, once. Yeah. I replaced it myself.
Okay.
Bought one secondhand off eBay. It is the mother of all jobs, because although replacing it is quite easy in the Model S, it's at the front when you take the front out,
Yep.
but the wiring loom has to get past underneath and come up the backside underneath the windscreen. So you have to take out the cross members, you have to take out the suspension air tank, you have to take out half the car. And me and my brother did it at the time, and we was working on the theory that I had the camera and I was filming and taking pictures as we took things away. And then all we simply did was we went back through the roll of pictures, working our way backwards to put everything back in the right sequence. Yeah, we managed to do it. We had to get the AC recompressed or repressurized.
Okay.
And actually, the AC or the compressor that I bought was a slightly newer version. So I got in touch with Tesla and they sent me an over-the-air patch so that the car recognized it, which was quite good. So AC. I've actually got a fault at the moment where I've got so my front wiring loom went one day, and basically the car started to overheat, because in the Model S you've got the little louvers that drop down when you charge it.
The louvers, just so you know, they block off the air intake for the air passing over the radiator slash condenser. So
Yeah.
they keep debris out until you need to cool off the battery pack or your interior, and then they open. So that's what you're talking about, right?
That's what I'm talking about. But unfortunately, on this particular day, I had to put my hand in and physically break the louvers because the car was overheating. Which then, like you say, then I drove back up the motorway and you get debris, and I got small holes in the condenser. So I've had to replace the condenser, and but it was either the car catch on fire probably through overheating, or risk the condenser. So
well, let me ask you: have you ever cleaned that condenser before it went bad? Did you ever chemically or vacuum clean that?
No, I've not. No, those side pockets, believe it or not, you get so much debris
Right.
From the road in there. So every now and again, I'll take the front bumper off and I get the Hoover out and I clean literally physically clean debris out there.
Oh, you do? Okay, because yeah,
Yeah,
I never did that until about a year ago, and I had just gone through my second air conditioning compressor, and I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, wait, I went through an air conditioning compressor a year and a half previous. Now I'm going through another one. This doesn't make sense. And
yeah,
then I realized that yeah, there's all this debris in there, and that's something that needs to be cleaned out on a regular basis. It's just that
that's it.
Tesla says there's no maintenance, so they don't have it on the schedule. You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when I do my maintenance and I have to take the frunk out, I generally just get a rag out and clean. I'm actually also as well on the coolant system. There is in the Tesla. There's a four-way valve on the
Yeah,
right, and then down the bottom there's a three-way valve,
yeah.
and I've replaced both of them as well.
Were they leaking at the time?
Yeah, yeah, they fail, and they leak, and then you start getting low
How
coolant water.
much well, what how much mileage did your vehicle have when those went bad?
Oh, it was well over 300,000 miles. Well over 300,000. It was
Yeah,
fairly recently.
mine are original. My valves have not been changed. I've never had any coolant leak in the vehicle so far. But you know, it's
Yeah.
inevitable, right? Whenever you keep something as long as you can, you're going to run into these
Oh
issues.
yeah. I mean,
Last forever.
everything will fail. Everything will fail eventually.
Yes,
Whether it be the human body or whatever, like, yeah, but
yes.
you eventually fail. Yeah. So yeah. So, but I mean, like I say, over 300,000 miles. And that's generally it. Really, it's nothing big. Like I say, original motors, touch wood,
Mhm.
and original batteries. Um, and like I say, I've got a problem at the moment with the air suspension.
Yes.
I thought it was a compressor that had failed, but it's actually the ECU, um, which is down. It's actually down in the passenger footwell, I think it is. So you
Hardware.
have to take all the dashboard to get down to it, sort of thing. So that's my next little job to have a crack at this
Yeah.
weekend.
Well, I mean, it's things that you could handle. You tend to not get all totally greased up like you do on an internal combustion engine if you're trying to fix
That's
these things,
that's
right?
true.
So yeah, overall, I mean, it sounds like just from what you're saying, it sounds obvious to me that it's a lot less maintenance, a lot cleaner job when you're doing something. And like you described, the drive line itself is like bulletproof. The actual motors and battery pack, right? Uh,
Yes.
I mean, because you can't say that about an internal combustion engine car. If you, I mean, if you were to have an internal combustion engine and transmission go 450,000 miles, most people, it would probably not be the original. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, and the great thing about Tesco as well is, which I've always loved, it is a community. So, like
Yep.
your group, for example. I
Yep.
mean, you um, I love the fact that when you go to a supercharger network, people get out the cars and they have conversations about the cars. It is a
Right.
club. That doesn't happen at petrol stations.
Right.
And also, as you come onto car maintenance, if you want to have a go at things yourself, I mean, I changed over the air compressor pump for my suspension today, and I just put it into YouTube, and there was probably
Nice.
about 7 or 8 videos of people doing it.
Yep.
Um, I would love to do a channel like that myself, but unfortunately, I curse a little bit too much when I'm doing mechanical issues, so it'd be basically bleeped out the entire way through. There would be a great deal of
I
conversation
think
there.
that's all right. I see plenty of videos on YouTube where people are cursing and they see that they're still monetized. It's all good.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, because I mean, it is a fantastic venture, isn't it? Something, and yeah. So yeah, there's a wealth of knowledge out there, and that's before you've even gone on Google and looked up on there as well. So
Right.
yeah, it's a good community.
Yeah. So
It's nice.
also when let's say you have your electric car, you like you said, you bypass the fuel pumps. And if you were to go to the fuel pumps, I know like you're a taxi driver. I mean, you have to smell that gasoline. It gets on you. It gets in the car. You know that
Yeah,
never happens with your car.
no,
Your
and
passengers are more. They're more happy with the
yeah,
experience as well.
but well, also as well. I mean, last was it last year? The year before last, in the UK, diesel was at $2 a litre. Sorry, £2 a litre. So I think at the time was the $1.6 to the pound. So that's $3.20 for 1 litre. And I think there's four and a half liters in a gallon. So
Right.
you're talking that's over $12, $13 a gallon. So it became even more economical then. And also we had a fuel shortage a few years ago where there was strikes by lorry drivers, and fuel just wasn't getting delivered. There was massive queues at the petrol station where people were panic buying, and my my friends in the business just couldn't get their hands on any fuel. So I picked up quite a lot of work because there was
Nice.
always electric on the charge or something, you know. So yeah, you're not really dependent on it as much either. So that's quite nice.
Yeah, so a lot of times when you're an early adopter, it doesn't work out. But for you, obviously, it has worked out. You've been in the right place at the right time, and
That's it.
yeah, there was a lot of uncertainty when you started, just like there was when I got my car. And I'm so thankful that it's all worked out, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah, and I'm a great believer in fate. I think what will be, and right place, right time.
yeah,
If I hadn't walked into my son's room at that exact time on that exact evening, I wouldn't have even seen a Tesla, and I would have. I'd have got on the bandwagon many years afterwards. So it'd have been too late. So yeah, it's an interesting story, and how fate plays its turn, doesn't it? So
yes.
yeah, and it's been a great experience. It's
All right,
been great.
Paul, you want to turn your camera on since we're about to end the video? Hopefully, you have enough signal. I know it's later in the evening there now in the UK.
It is. Yeah,
There
yeah.
we
I'm
go.
back. I'm back.
Yeah, so
So
so I want to kind of go back to the fact that you said your son told you about Tesla, right? I've heard this story before because it seems like people know when something is cool, so when something's like the next thing, and the kids seem to always know it, and the kids have been a big influence on the parents,
yeah,
and they were right here. So you
I'd never even heard of Elon Musk. I didn't know who he was. So I just spent the last 11 years in the desert somewhere, so I was a bit out of it anyway. So yeah,
yep.
it was fantastic. Yeah, it's great.
Well,
And
like I said, you don't even know about me, but when I got mine in 2017, it was delivered in March after being built in February. I was driving between Washington, D.C. and Raleigh, North Carolina, long distance, in addition to all my other different lifestyle factors. So you and I have kind of been, doing something somewhat similar on the other sides of the
the
pond
side of the world.
the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
time.
yeah. That's it. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and long may it continue. I did actually see a Cybertruck the other day as well. They actually had one over here on tour, but you weren't allowed to touch it. You weren't allowed to get into it, and we can't actually buy it. So that was quite a
Not,
novel thing. But I know you guys are enjoying the Cybertruck over there.
yeah, yeah, and they're just like you described your experience in 2016 and 17 with your Model S. People are just constantly pointing at people, taking
Yeah,
pictures, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
nonstop over
It's
here.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, he's a clever chap, old Elon, isn't he? He's a
Yes, he is. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
so and just like you said, the community is great. Talking to people at the superchargers, a lot of times over the years, it doesn't happen as much anymore. But a lot of times, I've had people come to me, how much does it cost to charge that? How long does it
yeah,
take?
yeah,
These are non electric car drivers, and
yeah.
everyone's always curious,
Yeah, well, we had some good news the other day as well. That so the guy that did the video on my car, Rory Reid,
right?
he's a presenter from Top Gear and
Yes.
Fifth Gear on Channel Five. We got an email off him the other day saying that Tesla have seen the videos.
Nice.
Tesla love the content because it is a MythBusters kind of video, and they are wanting to do some social media
Ah,
work for their social media with my car. So
nice.
hopefully it'll be so yeah, and hopefully I would like to get to 1,000,000 miles, and
Yeah.
it'd be nice if we got some support from Tesla with maybe a little bit of help along the way, and keeping the car on the road, and then hopefully we get another video when we get to 1,000,000 miles. It'd be quite nice.
Yeah, yeah, because you
Yeah,
probably know Tesla started. No, they didn't advertise until early this year. They started advertising on YouTube, and then they started advertising. That was January. Then Facebook started in March, and then Elon fired everybody a few months ago because he said he
yeah,
didn't like the content. That's what I heard. Didn't like the content. It was just like everybody else's ads. So maybe
yeah,
now that they've seen your vehicle, they're like, oh, okay, we can do something
yeah.
totally different.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's nice and it's refreshing when people are just on it. I mean, I'll be honest, the internet world is a crazy place. You still get people saying things aren't real when they are real and all this kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
I mean, we go through the car, we go through some of the little quirks about it, we go through some of the faults, like the eyebrows on the on the lights and like the windscreen wiper. So
Right.
it's not all rosy. There are downsides to it, and there are things you have to think about. But it's going to be quite a good series by all accounts. So although he did run out of electric in my car, unfortunately. So he was doing
What kind of how much mileage or state of charge was there when?
so well. He when he left my house, he wasn't quite at 100%. He was just maybe 10 miles off.
Okay.
But I think he still managed to achieve 186 miles to that charge. So he only lost probably 30 miles, but he was driving it on a motorway at 70 miles an hour, and it rained at one point, so the windscreen wipers were on, the aircon was on. So, but he still maintained, decent. And like I say, the great thing is that the network has increased so much. You don't need.
That's right. That's the last thing I want to mention. You and I have both witnessed the expansion of the supercharger network. I know you said there was a few hiccups. I was concerned because everybody talked, like if you go back to 2016, 17, and even 18, right as Model 3 was launched, everyone was predicting the supercharger apocalypse. They were saying, as soon as Tesla releases all these Model 3s, there'll be lines at every supercharger, and you'll never fill the charge. I'm like, that's all I have. I don't even have but it never happened. It never happened.
Well, I'm quite lucky that I work a lot at night, and a lot of Tesla owners are tucked up in bed when I work, so I get free range. And I can get to sites where there's like 28 chargers and there's nobody there. So I've never experienced it. So
and I think Tesla's they're collecting data, right? Every Tesla's connected to the internet. They're collecting data from your car. They know where you're going. They know where all the suggested supercharger stops are. They know like you said, how many people are using a supercharger at any one time. So they can constantly keep making updates to their plans and expansion of the network and put them just where they're needed. And that's what I've seen. I've seen them build them and launch them just as they're needed. So there hasn't really been a lull in the availability or anything.
Yeah, it's been great. It is the best selling point of the entire company. And ironically, if you took the supercharger network and turned it into a separate company, it'd be a massive company. it'd be one of the biggest companies in the world.
You're right. And Volkswagen tried to do that, at least in the U.S. with Electrify America, and that failed miserably. But still, I mean, it's nice to see that there'll be other vehicles. Oh, let me ask you one other question about version 4. The version 4 of the supercharger, you said, we both know there's a longer cable. Have you used version 4? Does it seem to work with any vehicle out there, regardless?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we've got a version 4 site, which is probably 12 miles away from my house.
Okay.
And it's a nice hotel, so you can have a nice cup of coffee, and there's nice clean toilets there and all that kind of good stuff. But it's when you really realise how many different electric cars there are on the market now. All kinds of everything from Skodas, Seats, VW, Porsche, Audi. There's so many different cars now, and it works on all, and it works no matter where the charge point is. It can reach everything. So it's a lot better design.
Yeah, I say the only thing that's lacking, right? If I could say two things actually about the supercharger network. Number one, they need to have a 24-hour bathroom at every location, because that's lacking in some areas, right? And then they need to have pull-through charging for trailers, for vehicles with trailers on the back, because it's just almost unusable for long-distance travel at this point in time.
Yeah, and I'm going to encounter that soon, because when I hopefully get a Model X 7-seater, you lose your luggage capacity, so you do need a small trailer. So that will be one of the things that I'll have to sort of plan for.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you can do right now to assure that you're not going to have a problem is to drop that trailer at your location and then go charge. But if it's raining or something, it's just a big mess,
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And also as well, you need to be able to keep an eye on it as well, so you don't lose it.
That's right, or nobody steals it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so they need a strategy for that. But
All right. Well, I think that concludes everything. I think we've talked about everything. And if anybody out there watching has questions for Paul, just put them down here in the comments. Join us at TeslaHighMileageClub.com. And, if we get enough questions, or just questions in the group too for Paul. Paul's in the group. You can tag him in the group. And actually behind me, you see this? Our logo says 100,000 miles plus. All right. But of course, Paul, you and I, we're way above that. We're actually going to release some new decals that go on your car very soon. So you're hearing about it here first. I've already got them together with our artist, and they'll be like 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, I think 500,000 and a million. There'll be all those available. I've got one on my car already in the back quarter window, so I'm going to fill that all up as I bring up the mileage.
You'll have to send me one over. I'll put one in my car for you as well.
Yes, yeah, I will. I will. So that'll motivate me to get these other ones. I got to upload them to the website so that they can be available for people.
Yeah.
So
Well,
um,
like I say, I'm doing about 10,000 miles a month, so hopefully within about 4 years I should be at 1,000,000 miles.
all
So
right, you'll be the first
yeah,
person to be able to
that's it.
utilize that.
We'll have to do another video then.
Yeah, we can do another video of that, or yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll be in England and I'll need a ride. Do you mainly take people to the airport? Is that what you do?
Yeah, we virtually 90% of our work at airports. So yeah.
Okay, so
Uh,
maybe I can request a ride from you
that's it.
from the airport because my wife and I travel a lot overseas. So yeah, we'll see if that works out one time too.
We'll make it happen.
All right, well have a good rest of the night, and I hope your pickup at what 2 a.m. goes well.
Yeah,
Right?
so I'm off to bed for 3 hours now, and then down to Birmingham. So
All
yeah,
right, well thank you for taking the time to explain to everyone, and I just thanks for your pioneering work here too. And your vision to see that this was a possibility for you, and it's
yeah.
worked out. I'm so glad.
It's more like the blind leading the blind, unfortunately. But
All right. All right. Thank you.
thank you.